The parking lot fell silent as officers formed a protective barrier around the massive German Shepherd. His teeth were bared, his body coiled like a loaded spring, and his eyes blazed with a fury that made even the most experienced handlers take a step back. "Stay back," the sergeant shouted, his voice cutting through the tension. "This dog is extremely dangerous. Do not approach under any circumstances." The crowd of onlookers pressed against the yellow caution tape. Phones raised, capturing every moment of the standoff. The dog had been found abandoned in an empty warehouse 3 hours earlier, and every attempt to calm him had ended in vicious snarling and lunging. Two handlers had already been forced to retreat, their equipment useless against the animal's raw aggression. No one knew where he came from or why he was so violent, but one thing was clear. This wasn't a dog anyone could help. Then from somewhere in the crowd, a tiny voice broke through the chaos. "Please let me through, I think I know him." Heads turned. Officers exchanged confused glances. And before anyone could stop her, a little girl no more than 7 years old ducked under the tape and walked straight toward the snarling beast. What happened next would leave everyone speechless and reveal a truth no one saw coming. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The morning had started like any other at the Metro Police Department. Officers shuffled through paperwork, K-9 units ran their drills, and the hum of routine filled the air. Sergeant Mike Torres adjusted his badge and reached for his coffee when the radio crackled to life. "Unit 12, we've got a report of an aggressive animal at the old Sullivan warehouse on 4th Street. Civilian caller says the dog appears injured and extremely hostile. Approach with caution." Mike's partner, Officer Lisa Grant, grabbed her tactical vest and nodded toward the door. "Another stray?" she asked. "Probably scared and hurt," Mike replied, draining the last of his coffee. "Let's hope we can tranquilize it before it becomes a bigger problem." But as they pulled up to the warehouse 20 minutes later, Mike knew immediately this wasn't going to be simple. The building loomed ahead, its broken windows staring down like hollow eyes. Rust streaked the metal siding, and weeds pushed through cracks in the concrete. The place had been abandoned for years, a graveyard for forgotten industry. Standing near the entrance was an elderly man clutching a phone, his face pale with fear. "He's in there," the man said, pointing toward the open loading bay. "I was walking my dog past here when I heard barking. Thought maybe some animal was stuck, so I went to check. But when I got close, that thing came at me like a demon. I barely made it out." Mike frowned. "What kind of dog are we talking about?" "Big, German Shepherd maybe, black and tan. But his eyes, officer, they weren't normal. He looked like he'd kill anything that moved." Lisa radioed for backup and grabbed the tranquilizer rifle from the trunk. "Let's take a look," she said quietly. They moved cautiously into the warehouse, flashlights cutting through the dusty darkness. The air smelled of rust and decay. Somewhere deep inside, they heard it, a low, guttural growl that echoed off the concrete walls. Mike's pulse quickened. "Easy," he whispered. "Let's not spook him." They rounded a corner, and there he was. The German Shepherd stood in the center of the empty floor, his fur matted with dirt and dried blood. One of his ears was torn, and his ribs showed faintly beneath his coat. But it was his eyes that stopped Mike cold. They weren't just angry, they were haunted. The dog's lips curled back, revealing sharp white teeth. His growl deepened, vibrating through the hollow space. "He's hurt," Lisa murmured. "Look at his paw." Blood stained the floor where the dog stood. His left front paw was swollen, possibly fractured. But despite the injury, the animal's stance was aggressive, ready to attack at any moment. "Let's try to calm him down," Mike said, lowering his voice. "Hey, buddy, it's okay. We're here to help." The dog barked once, a sharp, explosive sound that made both officers flinch. Then he lunged forward. Lisa raised the tranquilizer gun, but Mike grabbed her arm. "Wait, if we shoot him while he's this agitated, he could hurt himself worse." "Then what do we do?" Lisa asked, her voice tight with tension. Before Mike could answer, the dog charged. Not at them, but toward the open door behind them. The officers dove aside as the Shepherd bolted past, his claws scraping against the concrete. "He's getting away," Lisa shouted, scrambling to her feet. They ran after him, bursting out into the sunlight just in time to see the dog vanish into the maze of alleys beyond the warehouse. Mike cursed under his breath. "Call it in. We need units searching the area now." Within minutes, the call went out. "Aggressive dog loose in the downtown area. Considered dangerous. Do not approach." By noon, the situation had escalated. The dog had been spotted 3 more times, each sighting more alarming than the last. He chased a jogger through the park, cornered a delivery driver near the post office, and snapped at a mother pushing a stroller. Panic spread through the neighborhood. Parents kept their children indoors. Dog walkers avoided the streets. And the police, they were running out of options. Mike stood in the parking lot of the community center, surrounded by officers, canine handlers, and animal control specialists. The tension was thick enough to cut. "We've tried everything," one handler said, shaking his head. "Bait traps, tranquilizer darts, even brought in our best tracking dogs. Nothing works. This animal is too smart and too aggressive." Mike rubbed his tired eyes. "We can't keep chasing him around the city. Someone's going to get hurt." "Then what do you suggest?" another officer asked. Before Mike could answer, the radio buzzed. "All units, suspect dog spotted near the intersection of Maple and 5th. Repeat, suspect dog at Maple and 5th. He's cornered in the parking lot behind the old diner." Mike's jaw tightened. "Let's move. This ends now." The scene at the diner was chaos. Police cars blocked both ends of the narrow parking lot, their lights flashing red and blue against the brick walls. Officers had formed a semicircle around the German Shepherd, who stood backed against a chain-link fence, his body trembling with exhaustion and rage. A crowd had gathered beyond the police line, phones raised, recording every moment. Mike stepped forward slowly, his hand resting on the tranquilizer gun at his side. "Easy, boy," he said softly. "Nobody's going to hurt you." The dog's growl was low and continuous, like distant thunder. His ears lay flat against his head, and his eyes darted from face to face, searching for an escape that didn't exist. "We need to end this before he hurts someone," the sergeant said from behind Mike. "Take the shot." Mike hesitated. Something about the dog's eyes held him back. Beneath the aggression, he saw something else. Fear, pain, desperation. This wasn't a vicious animal. This was a survivor. But before he could lower the gun, the dog lunged at the fence, slamming his body against it with such force that the metal rattled. The crowd gasped. Officers shouted warnings. And then, cutting through the noise like a blade through fog, came a small, clear voice. "Please let me through. I think I know him." Every head turned. The crowd parted slowly, revealing a little girl with tangled brown hair and tear-streaked cheeks. She wore a faded pink jacket and clutched a worn stuffed dog in her arms. Her eyes were wide but determined. Mike's heart dropped. "No," he said firmly. "Sweetheart, you need to stay back. This dog is dangerous." "But I know him," she insisted, her voice trembling but steady. "His name is Shadow. He's my dad's dog." The crowd murmured. Officers exchanged uncertain glances. Mike knelt down to her level. "Honey, where are your parents?" Tears filled her eyes. "My dad, he was a police officer. He died 6 months ago. Shadow was his K9 partner. They said he was retired, that he was being taken care of. But then he disappeared." Mike's breath caught. He looked back at the dog, seeing him in a new light. The scars, the desperation, the refusal to trust anyone. This wasn't aggression. This was grief. "Sweetheart," Mike said gently, "even if that's true, this dog is hurt and scared. He might not recognize you. It's too dangerous." But the little girl shook her head. "He'll remember me. I know he will." And before anyone could stop her, she ducked under the police tape and walked straight toward the snarling German Shepherd. The world seemed to stop. Officers shouted. The crowd screamed. Mike lunged forward, but Lisa grabbed his arm. "Wait," she whispered. "Just wait." The little girl moved slowly, her small feet barely making a sound. The dog's growl deepened. His body coiled to strike. She was 3 feet away, then 2, then 1. And then she did something that made everyone hold their breath. She knelt down, reached into her pocket, and pulled out a small, battered police badge. "Shadow," she whispered, her voice breaking. "It's me. It's Emma. Remember, Daddy's little girl." For a moment, nothing happened. The dog stared at her, his lips still curled, his body still tense. Then slowly, his ears lifted. His growl faded into silence. He sniffed the air once, twice, and his entire body began to tremble. Not with rage, with recognition. "That's right," Emma whispered, tears streaming down her face. "It's me. I've been looking for you everywhere." Shadow took one hesitant step forward, then another, and then with a low whine that shattered every heart in that parking lot, he collapsed at her feet, his massive head resting in her lap. The crowd erupted into gasps and sobs. Officers stood frozen, tranquilizer guns lowered, witnessing something none of them would ever forget. Mike wiped his eyes quickly, his voice rough. "Get a vet down here. Now." Emma wrapped her arms around Shadow's neck, burying her face in his fur. "I've got you," she whispered. "You're not alone anymore. I promise." And in that moment, surrounded by flashing lights and stunned silence, two broken souls found each other again. The truth was finally beginning to surface, but the full story, the one that would explain Shadow's scars and Emma's tears, was still waiting to be told. The parking lot slowly came back to life. Paramedics arrived with blankets. A veterinarian rushed forward with a medical kit. But Emma refused to let go of Shadow, her small arms wrapped tightly around his neck as if she were afraid he might vanish again. "It's okay, sweetheart," the vet said gently, kneeling beside them. "I just need to check his injuries. You can stay right here with him." Emma nodded, her fingers stroking Shadow's matted fur. The dog lay still now, his breath coming in shallow pants, his eyes half closed with exhaustion. But every few seconds he would lift his head just enough to nuzzle her hand, as if reassuring himself she was real. Mike stood a few feet away, his mind racing. He turned to the sergeant. "We need to pull Officer. What was her father's name?" "Emma," a voice called from the crowd. An older woman stepped forward, her face lined with worry. "Her father was Officer Daniel Hayes. He was killed in the line of duty 6 months ago during a raid on a drug trafficking ring." Mike's stomach tightened. He remembered that case. Officer Hayes had been a decorated K-9 handler, known for his skill and his unbreakable bond with his partner. Shadow had been one of the best detection dogs in the department. "What happened to the dog after Hayes died?" Mike asked quietly. The woman, who identified herself as Emma's grandmother, shook her head bitterly. "The department said Shadow was too traumatized to work anymore. They claimed he'd be placed in a good home, retired with dignity. But Emma and we never got to say goodbye. One day he was there, and the next he was gone. We tried to find him, called every shelter, every rescue. Nothing. It was like he disappeared into thin air." Lisa joined them, her expression grim. "I'll pull the records. Something doesn't add up." As the vet worked on Shadow's injuries, cleaning wounds and wrapping his swollen paw, Emma whispered softly to him. "I looked for you every day," she said, her voice breaking. "I went to the park where you and Daddy used to train. I asked everyone if they'd seen you. Grandma said maybe you went to live on a farm, but I knew you wouldn't leave me, not unless something bad happened." Shadow whined softly, pressing closer to her. The vet glanced up at Mike. "He's malnourished, dehydrated, and this paw is badly infected. Judging by the scarring, I'd say he's been living rough for months. There are also signs of old injuries, a fractured rib that healed wrong, lacerations that weren't treated. This dog's been through hell." Mike's jaw clenched. "How does a retired police K-9 end up living on the streets?" "That's what we're going to find out," Lisa said, her phone already pressed to her ear. By late afternoon, the pieces began to fall into place. Lisa returned with a stack of files and a look of barely contained fury. "You're not going to believe this," she said, slamming the documents onto the hood of the patrol car. "Shadow was supposed to be transferred to a certified K-9 retirement facility upstate, but the paperwork was forged. The facility has no record of ever receiving him." Mike's blood ran cold. "Then where did he go?" "Looks like he was handed over to a private contractor," Lisa continued, flipping through the pages. "A guy named Marcus Vega. He runs a so-called dog rehabilitation center on the outskirts of town. Except there's nothing rehabilitative about it. I did some digging. Vega's been cited multiple times for animal neglect, overcrowding, unsanitary conditions, inadequate medical care. The place is a nightmare. And the department sent Shadow there? Mike asked, disbelief thick in his voice. Lisa's expression darkened. Whoever signed off on this either didn't do their homework or didn't care. The sergeant stepped forward, his face grave. We're launching an internal investigation immediately, but right now our priority is making sure that little girl and her dog are safe. Emma had been listening quietly, her hand resting on Shadow's head. He ran away, didn't he? She said softly. He was trying to come home. The vet nodded slowly. Dogs like Shadow, they're trained to be loyal, to protect, to serve. When they lose their handler, it's like losing a part of themselves. If he was kept in poor conditions, separated from everything familiar, he would have fought to escape, and judging by these scars, he fought hard. Tears streamed down Emma's face. He was looking for Daddy. He didn't know. Her voice broke, and she buried her face in Shadow's fur. The dog whined again, licking her cheek gently. Mike felt his throat tighten. He knelt beside them, his voice soft but firm. Emma, I promise you, we're going to make this right. Shadow's not going anywhere without you. Not ever again. She looked up at him with red, swollen eyes. You mean it? I mean it, Mike said. And we're going to make sure the people who did this answer for it. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the parking lot, the crowd slowly dispersed. But the story was far from over. News crews arrived, cameras rolling, capturing the moment a little girl and her father's loyal partner were finally reunited. By the next morning, the footage had gone viral. Millions of people watched as Emma wrapped her arms around Shadow as the dog, once deemed too dangerous to approach, melted into the embrace of the one person who had never stopped searching for him. Comments poured in from around the world. This is what loyalty looks like. That dog never gave up hope. Someone needs to investigate how this happened. And someone did. Within 48 hours, a full investigation was launched into the handling of retired canines within the department. Marcus Vega's facility was raided, revealing conditions even worse than suspected. Dozens of dogs, many of them former police and military canines, were found living in cramped, filthy cages. Some were injured. Others were sick. All of them had been abandoned by the system meant to protect them. Vega was arrested on multiple counts of animal cruelty and fraud. The officers who had signed off on Shadow's transfer were suspended pending review. But for Emma and Shadow, justice was only part of the healing. The real journey was just beginning. Mike visited them a week later at Emma's grandmother's house. The small backyard had been transformed. A new dog bed sat in the corner of the porch. Toys were scattered across the grass. And Shadow, his paw now bandaged and healing, lay in the sun, his eyes calm for the first time in months. Emma sat beside him, reading aloud from a book. When she saw Mike, she smiled. He's getting better, she said. The vet says his paw should heal completely in a few weeks. Mike sat down on the porch steps. How are you doing? Emma's smile faded slightly. I still miss Daddy, every day. But having Shadow back, it's like having a piece of him with me again. Shadow lifted his head, resting it on her lap. She stroked his ears gently. He has nightmares sometimes, she said quietly. He wakes up barking and shaking. Grandma says it's because of what happened to him. But I stay with him, and he calms down. Mike nodded slowly. Dogs like Shadow, they're heroes. They give everything to protect us. And when they can't do that anymore, they deserve to be taken care of. Your dad knew that. That's why he loved Shadow so much. Emma looked at the dog, her eyes glistening. Do you think Daddy knows we found each other? Mike's voice was gentle. I think he does, and I think he's proud of both of you. As the days turned into weeks, Shadow began to transform. The aggression faded. The fear subsided. In its place grew trust, slowly but surely. Emma never left his side. She walked him every morning before school, talking to him about her day, her friends, her memories of her father. And Shadow listened, his tail wagging softly, his eyes full of quiet understanding. One afternoon, Emma's grandmother called Mike. You need to see this, she said, her voice thick with emotion. When Mike arrived, he found Emma and Shadow in the backyard. The little girl had set up a small obstacle course, makeshift jumps made from broomsticks and boxes. "Come on, Shadow," she called, clapping her hands. "You remember this, don't you? Daddy taught you." For a moment, the dog just stared at the course. Then slowly he stood, his ears perked. His body shifted into a stance Mike recognized instantly, the alert, focused posture of a working canine, and then Shadow ran. He cleared the first jump with ease, wove through the poles, leaped over the final barrier, and skidded to a stop in front of Emma, sitting perfectly at attention. Emma threw her arms around him, laughing and crying at the same time. "Good boy, Shadow. You did it." Mike felt tears sting his eyes. This wasn't just a dog recovering from trauma. This was a warrior remembering who he was. "He still got it," Mike said quietly to Emma's grandmother. She nodded, wiping her own tears. He never lost it. He just needed someone to remind him he was still loved. That night, as Emma tucked Shadow into his bed on the porch, she whispered, "You're home now, and you're never going to be alone again." Shadow's tail thumped softly against the blanket, and for the first time since Officer Daniel Hayes had died, the loyal German shepherd closed his eyes and slept peacefully. But the story didn't end there, because what Emma and Shadow were about to do next would inspire an entire nation and change the lives of forgotten heroes everywhere. 3 months after Shadow's rescue, Emma sat at the kitchen table, carefully gluing photos onto a poster board. Her grandmother watched from the doorway, a soft smile on her face. "What are you working on, sweetheart?" Emma didn't look up, her tongue poking out slightly in concentration. "A project for school, but it's not just for school, it's for Shadow, and for all the other dogs like him." She held up the poster. Across the top, in bold letters, she had written, "Heroes deserve better." Beneath it were photos of Shadow, before and after, pictures of other retired canines, newspaper clippings about animal neglect, and at the bottom a simple message: "These dogs protected us. Now it's our turn to protect them." Her grandmother's eyes misted over. "Emma, this is beautiful. I'm going to show it to my class," Emma said firmly, "and then I'm going to show it to everyone. Because what happened to Shadow, it's not fair, and I'm not going to let it happen to any other dog." The next week, Emma stood in front of her classmates, Shadow sitting calmly at her side. She had been granted special permission to bring him to school for her presentation. "This is Shadow," she began, her voice small but steady. "He was my dad's partner. My dad was a police officer, and Shadow helped him catch bad guys and keep people safe. But when my dad died, Shadow got sent to a bad place. He was hurt and scared and alone, and nobody helped him." The classroom was silent. Every eye was on the little girl and the massive German shepherd beside her. "But I found him," Emma continued, her voice growing stronger, "and now he's home. But there are lots of other dogs out there who aren't home yet. Dogs who worked hard their whole lives and now they're forgotten. And that's not okay." She held up her poster, turning it so everyone could see. "So I'm asking for your help. I want to start something called Shadow's Promise. It's going to make sure that every retired police dog and military dog gets a good home and the care they deserve." One of her classmates raised a hand. "How are we going to do that?" Emma smiled. "We're going to raise money. We're going to write letters. And we're going to make people pay attention. Because if a little kid and a hurt dog can find each other, then we can make sure no other dog gets left behind." The room erupted in applause. By the end of the day, Emma's entire class had signed a petition demanding better treatment for retired canines. Her teacher posted the presentation video online, and within hours it had been shared thousands of times. By the end of the week, the local news picked up the story. Emma appeared on camera, Shadow at her side, explaining her mission with the clarity and passion of someone far beyond her years. "These dogs are heroes," she said, looking directly into the camera, "and heroes should never be forgotten." The response was overwhelming. Donations poured in from across the country. Shelters reached out offering support. Retired officers and veterans shared their own stories of canine partners they had lost touch with. And in the middle of it all, Emma and Shadow became the faces of a movement that refused to be ignored. Mike watched the news coverage from his living room, shaking his head in amazement. "That kid's going to change the world," he muttered. His phone buzzed. It was a text from the police chief. Can you come in tomorrow? We need to talk about the Hayes case. The next morning, Mike sat across from Chief Williams, a man known for his stern demeanor and no-nonsense approach. But today, the chief's expression was softer, almost regretful. I've been following what Emma Hayes has been doing, the chief began, and frankly, it's embarrassing. Mike frowned. Embarrassing, sir? For us, the chief clarified. A 7-year-old girl is doing more to honor her father's memory and protect our retired K-9s than this entire department has done in years. That ends now. He slid a folder across the desk. I'm launching a formal program. We're calling it the K-9 Legacy Initiative. Every retired police dog will be tracked. They'll receive lifetime medical care, proper placement, and regular check-ins. No dog will ever slip through the cracks again. Mike opened the folder, scanning the detailed plans inside. This is incredible, sir. It's the least we can do, the chief said quietly, and I want Emma and Shadow to be part of the launch. They're the reason this is happening. 1 month later, the police department held a ceremony in the park. Hundreds of people attended, officers, families, reporters, and dog lovers from all over the city. On a raised platform stood Emma, wearing a small honorary badge pinned to her jacket. Shadow sat beside her, his coat gleaming, his eyes calm and proud. Chief Williams stepped to the microphone. Today, we honor not just the K-9s who serve, but the ones who have already served. And we honor a little girl who reminded us what loyalty really means. He gestured to Emma. Emma Hayes lost her father, Officer Daniel Hayes, 6 months ago, but she refused to lose his legacy. Through her courage and determination, she found Shadow, her father's partner. And through that reunion, she inspired all of us to do better. The crowd applauded. Emma blushed but stood tall. Emma, the chief continued, on behalf of the entire department, I present you with the first ever K-9 Legacy Award. This honor recognizes individuals who go above and beyond to protect and care for our retired working dogs. He placed a medal around her neck. The crowd erupted into cheers. Emma looked down at Shadow, tears streaming down her face. We did it, she whispered. Shadow's tail wagged, and for just a moment, it was as if Officer Daniel Hayes was standing right there with them, smiling down at his daughter and his loyal partner. Over the next few months, Shadow's promise grew beyond anything Emma had imagined. Schools across the country started fundraisers. Businesses donated. Volunteers stepped forward to foster retired K-9s. And most importantly, laws began to change. A bill was introduced in the state legislature requiring all retired police and military dogs to be tracked and provided with lifetime care. It was nicknamed Shadow's Law. Emma testified before the committee, Shadow at her side. These dogs protect us, she said simply, so we need to protect them. It's that easy. The bill passed unanimously. When Emma and her grandmother returned home that night, they found their porch covered in flowers, letters, and gifts from strangers. One letter written in shaky handwriting stood out. It was from an elderly veteran. Dear Emma, I lost my military dog 10 years ago. I searched but never found him. Your story gave me hope. Because of you, other families won't go through what I did. Thank you for giving us all a reason to believe in kindness again. Emma read the letter aloud to Shadow, her voice trembling. You hear that, Shadow? We're helping people. Daddy would be so proud. Shadow rested his head on her lap, his eyes soft and understanding. That night, as Emma drifted off to sleep, Shadow lay at the foot of her bed, his breathing slow and steady. And for the first time since Officer Daniel Hayes had died, the world felt right again. Not perfect, not without pain, but right, because love, loyalty, and courage had won. And in the end, that was the only promise that truly mattered. 1 year after Shadow's rescue, Emma stood once again on a stage. But this time, it wasn't in a parking lot or a police ceremony. It was at the National K-9 Conference, attended by handlers, trainers, and advocates from all 50 states. Shadow sat beside her, wearing a vest that read, Therapy Dog in bold letters. Emma had spent the past months training with him, transforming the once aggressive, traumatized shepherd into a certified therapy dog who now visited hospitals, schools, and veteran centers. A year ago, Emma began, her voice clear and confident, The police told everyone to stay away from this dog. They said he was dangerous. They said he couldn't be saved. She paused, looking down at Shadow. But they were wrong. Shadow wasn't dangerous. He was hurting, and all he needed was someone to remember who he really was. The audience sat in rapt silence. My dad used to say that a dog's loyalty is the purest thing in the world. They don't care if you're rich or poor, strong or weak. They just love you. And when you love them back, there's nothing they won't do for you. She gestured to Shadow. This dog walked through fire to find his way back to me. And now we're walking together to make sure no other dog has to go through what he did. The crowd rose to its feet, applause thundering through the hall. Emma smiled, tears glistening in her eyes, and knelt down to hug Shadow. Later that evening, as the conference wound down, Mike approached Emma and her grandmother. "You've done something incredible," he said. "You know that, right?" Emma shrugged, a shy smile on her face. "I just did what Daddy would have wanted." Mike knelt down to Shadow's level, scratching behind the dog's ears. "You've got one amazing partner here, buddy. Take care of her." Shadow's tail wagged and he licked Mike's hand. As Mike stood to leave, Emma called out, "Officer Torres?" He turned. "Thank you," she said simply, "for believing me that day, for letting me try." Mike's throat tightened. "No, Emma, thank you. You reminded all of us what it means to fight for the ones we love." As he walked away, Mike glanced back one more time. Emma and Shadow sat together on a bench, the setting sun casting them in golden light. The little girl rested her head against the dog's shoulder, and the dog, once deemed too dangerous to approach, closed his eyes in perfect peace. The months that followed brought more changes than anyone had anticipated. Shadow's law spread beyond the state, inspiring federal legislation. The K9 Legacy Initiative expanded nationwide, with hundreds of retired working dogs now tracked, cared for, and honored. Emma and Shadow became ambassadors for the cause, traveling to schools, police departments, and military bases. Everywhere they went, people were moved by their story. Children wrote letters, adults donated, and slowly the system that had failed Shadow and so many others began to heal. One crisp autumn morning, Emma and her grandmother visited the cemetery where Officer Daniel Hayes was buried. Shadow walked calmly beside them, his head high, his steps steady. Emma knelt at the headstone, placing a small bouquet of wildflowers beside it. "Hi, Daddy," she whispered. "I brought Shadow. He's doing really good now. We're helping lots of dogs together, just like you used to." She paused, her fingers tracing the engraved letters of her father's name. "I miss you every day, but I know you're proud of us, and I promise I'll keep taking care of Shadow, just like you asked." Shadow stepped forward, resting his head gently against the headstone. For a long moment, he stayed perfectly still, as if paying his own silent respects to the man who had been his partner, his handler, his friend. Emma's grandmother wiped her eyes, turning away to give them a moment of privacy. And in that quiet cemetery, beneath the golden leaves and the endless sky, a little girl and a loyal dog stood together, bound by a promise that would never be broken. As they walked back to the car, Emma looked up at her grandmother. "Do you think Daddy's watching us?" Her grandmother smiled through her tears. "I know he is, sweetheart, and I think he's smiling." Emma nodded, her hand resting on Shadow's head. "Then we'll keep making him proud." And they did. Every single day. The story of Emma and Shadow became more than just a viral moment. It became a movement, a reminder that loyalty, love, and courage could change the world, that even the most broken souls could be healed, and that sometimes the smallest voices carried the loudest truths. Years later, when Emma graduated high school, she gave a speech to her classmates. Shadow, now older and grayer, sat in the front row, his vest still reading "Therapy Dog." "When I was 7, Emma told the crowd, I learned that the world can be cruel, but I also learned that it can be kind, that people will listen if you refuse to stay silent, and that the bond between a child and a dog can change everything." She looked at Shadow, who gazed back at her with those same loyal, understanding eyes. "My dad taught me to be brave, and Shadow taught me to never give up. Together, they gave me a purpose. And I hope that whatever you do with your lives, you find yours too." The audience erupted into applause, and as Emma walked across the stage to receive her diploma, Shadow's tail wagged proudly. Because he knew, in the way only dogs can, that the little girl who had once saved him was now saving the world, one act of kindness at a time. The police had warned, "Don't go near this dog," but a little girl stepped forward, and in doing so, she proved that love is always stronger than fear, that loyalty never dies, and that heroes, whether they walk on two legs or four, are never truly forgotten. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Because stories like this remind us that courage comes in all sizes, and sometimes the smallest heroes make the biggest difference. Stay tuned for more stories that prove one thing: love, loyalty, and a brave heart can change the world.